Just days after Britain's jump jet version of the Joint Strike Fighter made its maiden flight in the USA, the Royal Navy appears to have dived into the row over which version UK forces will get. For their news release, trumpeted an aircraft that will deliver the punch of the Royal Navy's future carriers at the end of the decade. The MOD were quick to retract, saying it referred to the Joint Strike Fighter generally, not the specific aircraft seen here, the B version, replaced in the Defence Review by a cheaper conventional variant needing a longer takeoff. But with the carriers under construction and £250 million already spent preparing to swap ski jumps for catapults and arrestor gear, the total cost of conversion soared to £1.8 billion. If confirmed, the decision to save that by reverting to Labour's original plan could prove not only politically embarrassing at home, but awkward with key NATO partners.
Going with a conventional carrier design with cats and traps, as they say, will also allow you greater interoperability with your main allies, obviously the US and the French, who were looking to develop a carrier capability more. A shift back to the B model would obviously cut out a great deal of that interoperability.
Nevertheless, all three service chiefs are said to back the change because it avoids further delay, bridges the so-called Harrier gap and raises the prospect that both carriers could be brought into service rather than one as originally planned.
There's nothing fundamentally wrong with changing your mind as long as you're changing your mind for the right reasons. You've then got to portray that and then you've got to stick to that. I don't think, nobody would thank the UK if we were 2 years further down the line to say, oh, you know what, we'd like to change again. I think this is probably our last shot at jumping ship.
The downside is that each jump jet will cost more to buy and operate, has less range and carries fewer weapons. Defence procurement's never easy. The cost of getting it wrong endures for decades. But shipyards, plane makers and the military themselves need a decision soon. Jeff Mead, Forces News.
Well, earlier I spoke to the Shadow Defence Secretary Jim Murphy and began by asking him whether he still thought the jump jet was the right choice.
I think if these rumoured changes are confirmed, of course it's a dramatic and pretty embarrassing U-turn for David Cameron, but it'll probably end up being the right decision. I only wish we hadn't had to go through as a country this period of instability and uncertainty, which has wasted time, it's wasted talent, and it now looks as if it's cost a huge amount of money as well.
And yet by opting for the jump jet version, you are opting, or you would be opting, the government would be, for an aircraft that can't fly as far, can't carry as much weaponry, actually costs more to operate, and would have serious consequences for interoperability with, say, the French. It's quite a significant decision on our future capability.
It's one of two or three of the most important strategic decisions we'll take as a nation in our defence for over that period of time.
Which is why you can't really
it's important we get it right.
Yeah, which is why you can't really criticise the government for trying to take its time to make the right decision.
I criticise the government for, in the Strategic Defence and Security Review, just ignoring all the available information and advice that was available to them. The previous Labour government decided on this vertical takeoff and landing for good reason, based upon good solid military advice and the design of these new aircraft carriers. The new government came in, and of course they're entitled to look at things afresh. But they looked at it and changed it, it appears now, for the sake of changing it, to give the appearance of difference rather than for what was in the interests of our country and the best military advice available.
The government has made its decisions based on costs, based on what it's inherited from the Labour government. You can't really blame it for having to grapple with the difficulties of procurement, which the Labour government had to deal with as well. It's not an easy thing to deal with. Whatever decision you make, it is not necessarily the right decision.
I think that's a very fair point. Procurement is difficult, regardless which party is in power. Difficulties about defence procurement bedevil all political parties. It's about systems, it's about complexity. It's about designing a piece of kit that by the time it comes off the drawing board and we're looking to get it into theatre, the requirements have changed so dramatically that it has to itself be redesigned and redefined. So these complexities are there. But this instance is a mess entirely of these ministers making.
They also wanted to operate with the French. This is ruled out if they do this U-turn, as you could put it.
Well, it's one of the issues is how we would be interoperable with the French in particular. Now that we have that defence agreement with France, which again is welcome. It's sensible as the opposition party to say what the government's doing is right when they do the correct thing. So that bipartisan relationship with France and with other European countries in the future would be important. Yeah, there will be ways, there are things that perhaps, if the government does confirm this decision, that interoperability with the French won't be possible. There'll be interoperability with others, perhaps, across the world, with the US Marines, perhaps, and others. But these are things that governments have to weigh up. They're things that the previous government weighed up and came to a decision. I just wish the current government that we had on this most important of defence projects had just taken a couple of weeks longer to look at the facts, do the homework, look at the costs, and perhaps we wouldn't have had this dreadful mess over the past year where we sold, for example, the Harriers to the US, what, for £112 million? It's now rumoured this delay and reconfiguration is going to cost more than twice that. Now, that's not the right way to govern our country. It's not the right way to treat defence. It's going to cost money and not save money. That can't be in our country's interest. It's gross inefficiency entirely of ministers making, and they should apologise for it.